How are you guys doing? Today is Monday, October 18th, 2021. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, now that the 2021 NBA Finals are over, it is a wrap and only one team is left to claim the title. The 2021 Chicago Sky are going to be the focus of this episode, and through this championship profile, I'm going to review the path that the Chicago Sky, of course, took to get here. It is very tough for a team to make it in an 8-team bracket as not even a top 4 team, to make it all the way through and, of course, win it, considering they had to go through 2 single elimination games to even make it to the semifinal in the first place. It's just been an amazing ride from this team, and for the first time in this franchise's history, they will get to raise up a trophy that they will get to call their very own. And of course, for many that are on the team, this is going to be the chance for them to be a part of WNBA history. And of course, considering this is history, I'm going to take the time to really make an episode out of this. If you're unfamiliar with how the Chicago Sky did this season, the Chicago Sky finished the regular season with a 16-16 record. They finished with the second best record in the Eastern Conference, but the majority of the Eastern Conference wasn't necessarily doing incredibly well. They would come into the bracket as the 6th seed in the WNBA, sitting behind the Phoenix Mercury, the Seattle Storm, the Minnesota Lynx, the Las Vegas Aces, and the Connecticut Sun. They were sitting ahead of the Dallas Wings and the New York Liberty. Their very first matchup that they had to face off against were the Dallas Wings, and in their very first single elimination matchup, they would end up having to defeat the Dallas Wings 81-64. In this matchup, they outscored Dallas by 11 in the first quarter and by 4 in the second, so that's a 15-point deficit in the first half. They were outscored by 10 in the third, and then Chicago outscored Dallas by 12 in the fourth, so they outscored them by 2 in the second. Looking at how Chicago fared in this, or looking at how the individual players fared, Wnba Copper would lead the team in scoring as she finished with 23 points. Courtney Vandersloot finished with 17 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists. And, of course, Allie Quigley added 15 points of her own, not to mention Candace Parker added in an almost triple-double with 11 points, 15 rebounds, 7 assists, and 3 steals. Following their first matchup, they had to make it through the second round, which is also a single elimination matchup. In the second round, the winners of the first elimination games have to face off against the 3 and 4 seed, depending on who made it through. Because the 5th seed Phoenix Mercury made it through, the 6th seed Chicago Sky had to play the higher seed, the 3 seed Minnesota Lynx. And in this matchup, the Chicago Sky would end up beating the Minnesota Lynx 86-79. Looking at how this matchup fared for Chicago, they would end up having to outscore Minnesota by 9 in the second half after Minnesota got the jump on them in the first half. For Chicago, they were led in scoring in this game by Courtney Vandersloot. She had 19 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 steals alongside 5 turnovers. Wnba Copper finished with 16 points and 10 rebounds as she shot 6 for 11 from the field. And then, of course, their forward Azura Stevens out of UConn would end up with 15 points of her own alongside 8 rebounds. After beating the 3rd seed Minnesota Lynx, the Chicago Sky would have to go to the next round to face off against the 1 and 2 seed. Since the 5th seed Phoenix Mercury would advance to the next round, the Chicago Sky advancing would automatically have to face off against the 1st seed Connecticut Sun. And of course, going into this matchup is when they actually had to play a series. Looking at how this series went, looking at the very first game of this matchup, the Sky ended up beating the Sun by 6 in overtime. They were led in scoring this game by Candace Parker, who had 22 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists. Courtney Vandersloot added in a triple-double of her own with 12 points, 18 rebounds, and 18 assists. 12 points, 10 rebounds, and 18 assists alongside 4 steals and a couple of blocks. Not to add on, and also adding on, Allie Quigley would go on to finish with 19 points of her own to give the Sky the Game 1 win. And then game 2 would be taken by the Connecticut Sun, the only game that the Sky would lose in this series. Connecticut would end up having to outscore Chicago by 12 points in the fourth quarter for this come-behind win. For Chicago, they had 4 players in double-digit scoring. Candace Parker had 12 points and 7 rebounds. Azura Stevens would finish with 10 points. Courtney Vandersloot had 10 points, 6 assists, and 6 turnovers. Kalia Copper had 13 points and 5 rebounds, even 3 steals and 2 blocks. Once the series was evened up at 1, the Chicago Sky would end up having to beat the Connecticut Sun in game 2 by 3 points. Looking at how this game would have to result in the Sky outscoring the Sun, or they came into the fourth quarter trailing, but they would have to come from behind and pick up a very big win at home. They were led in scoring by Allie Quigley, who had 21 points, but more points than her was Kalia Copper had more points than Quigley, as Kalia Copper had 26 points in 33 minutes. After this game 3 win, and they were up 2-1, the Chicago Sky would have to seal game 4 off of a 10-point win, beating the Connecticut Sun 79-69. Chicago Sky were led in scoring in game 4 by Courtney Vandersloot, who had 19 points alongside her 8 turnovers. Kalia Copper had 18 points and 6 rebounds. Candace Parker had 17 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists. Following this series win for the Chicago Sky in 4 games, they would end up going to the WNBA Finals, where they would face off against the Phoenix Mercury, the very team that played in every single round that they did. They were just the final matchup. In the very first matchup in Phoenix, the Chicago Sky would end up taking that game, winning it 91-77 by 14 points. Chicago would end up having to outscore Phoenix by 16 points in the second quarter, which was the difference. For the Sky, they were led in scoring by Kalia Copper, who had 21 points, 10 rebounds, and 3 assists. Also, Allie Quigley had 18 points of her own. Candace Parker had 16 points and 8 rebounds. Game 2 was taken by the Phoenix Mercury at home, as they wanted to even it up before it went to Chicago. For the Sky in Game 2, they were led in scoring by Courtney Vandersloot. She had 20 points, 14 rebounds, and 5 steals. Allie Quigley had 19 points and 6 rebounds. The Mercury were the better team. Going back to Chicago, the Chicago Sky would have to take Game 3 by beating the Mercury 86-50. One of the biggest deficits in WNBA history. I wouldn't be surprised if this was the largest deficit in this series history. The Chicago Sky were led, of course, by Kalia Copper, who finished with 22 points, shooting 6 for 10 from the field and a perfect 8 for 8 from the foul line. Following this win, this would, of course, lead them to the final win to their final win. The Chicago Sky would end up having to beat the Phoenix Mercury in Game 4 at home by 6. They had to outscore the Phoenix Mercury by 15 in the fourth quarter. They were led by Allie Quigley, who had 26 points and 5 rebounds. Courtney Vandersloot finished with 10 points, 9 rebounds, and 15 assists. Candace Parker finished with 16 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, and 4 steals. And Kalia Copper would finish with 10 points on her own. And then looking at how this fares, of course, with Chicago Sky winning their very first title, of course, the WNBA Finals MVP would end up going to Kalia Copper. She would lead the Chicago Sky in scoring over the 10 games she played. She averaged 17.7 points, 5.3 rebounds, just under 2 assists per game, while helping lead the Sky all the way from being the 6th seed to the WNBA champions. Not many people expected them to win, considering they finished at 500 on the regular season. But regardless, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Congratulations to the 2021 Chicago Sky and what they did this season. I want to thank ESPN and the WNBA websites for giving me what I needed for this episode. I apologize if I butchered any of the names. I do plan on getting them right. This has been an amazing WNBA season, and I can't wait to get started once next year's playoffs start. Until then, thanks for listening to my piece. I hope all is well, and I will catch you with more tomorrow on Tuesday, October 19th, once all of today's matchups and exhibitions are done. Until then, thanks for listening to my piece. I hope all is well, and peace out. I'll catch you tomorrow.